What up, what up, what up? Welcome to this week's episode of Pels Pod of New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brothers, Garrick Rattler. What's poppin' with you, bro?
What up, bro? Fresh out of this crazy week that we both had, man. It was appreciate everybody, holding us down during the week. It was crazy how we both had this just wild work week and personal life week that just kept us away for a bit. So it's good to be back, man. It's good to see your face. Good to get on the pod and talk about these Pels, man. It's time is of the essence, man. It's we everybody's starting to point at the time like game scoring or something. So time is of the essence, man. So how's everything going on your end?
Everything is good on our end. Derek Carr. Hey, shout out Derek Carr. Now let's say
Derek Carr,
man. We'll see. We'll see. With that being said, before we get into the Pels world, because they have plenty to talk about on that end, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Pels Pod, follow us on IG at Pels Podcast, like the episode below, and most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Network. So there's been a couple injuries since the last time we talked.
Yeah.
Jose is out with like a fractured tibia, and Larry Nance tweaked his ankle. Thank God it wasn't a high ankle sprain, but he's out. Zion still no timetable on his return, but he's posting on IG some notorious BIG lyrics, kind of giving some hints that he might be closer than not to returning. So injuries have not been fun to the Pelicans, but in their absence, what you have seen is some lottery picks from the Pelicans past get a little bit of a look. And so we'll dive into that in just a bit. But my question to you after the tough stretch that the Pelicans are 1-6, their last 7, it's not great. With 18 games left, the Pelicans are currently in the ninth spot. Utah lost last night. It's going to change every single night, every time a team wins or lose.
Yep.
They're 2 games in the loss columns of 4th. But they're also not very far away from not being in the play-in at all.
Yes.
So my first question to you is, do you think they make at least the play-in? The second question to you is, can they do enough and hold on enough to avoid the play-in altogether in terms of making the playoffs outright, being a top 6 seed of some kind? I'll let you go.
We talked about, coming into the season about the uniqueness of the Pelicans, right? From the front office to, the roster construction to, being in a situation where you have veterans who are like trying to win, but also like young players, having all the draft picks with stars on it's just a lot of uniqueness with the Pelicans. And this has been a really, really unique season, because if you told me the Pelicans played most of the season without Zion and most of the season without Brandon Ingram and in and out of the lineups, these guys and that guy, I'd be like, well, the Pelicans are probably, not in contention for anything, right?
In the Victor Wembanyama race.
Right. Like they are heavily in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes. But like with the Western Conference, the way that it is, it's like, these guys are everything that the Pelicans want to do at the beginning of the season is still in front of them, all the way down to being able to host a playoff series. And so, the goals are in front of them because of how crazy the Western Conference has been. And so if you ask me, I think obviously I think the Pelicans make the play-in. I do think that they are a good enough team. I know like they lose a lot, but it seems like they win that game whenever they need to kind of keep themselves afloat. And then you hear about like LeBron's injuries, all the teams that's around the Pelicans, you've got to feel like they'll be able to get the wins when they need to and stay in the play-in tournament at least. So I do think they make the play-in tournament. Now, will they be able to win enough games to miss the playoffs altogether? I don't think so. I don't know if that's gonna be a situation because Zion's injury, it's going to take a while for him to get back into the Zion that everybody knows, the Zion you saw before he gets hurt. And with the Western Conference. Well, let me say this. It depends on how many
It's
more
tough.
games you do.
It's tough.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're saying he comes back with 10 games remaining, then maybe. But if you're looking at like 8 to 7, I just think that the Pelicans will be, who they are, who they've shown us to be, up until this time without Zion. And so, I do think they'll get in the play-in tournament. Now, I think that they'll be a favorite in the play-in game if and when they do get there, because if you're talking about Zion getting back, Zion for one game can beat any team, any player. The Pelicans have a shot against any team with Zion in one game. And so I do think that they would be the favorite. I just think that with Zion's injury and, just the amount of time is going to take for him to get back into, the Zion that everybody knows and remembers, like he'll still be good. He'll still be really good. But the Zion, the point Zion, like the sharpness, the things like that, you got to remember these guys haven't played at all this season together. The three, right? The big three or the big four, Z, when you think about Z and the Alphabet Boys. So I just think that, it's going to take some time for them to kind of gel in, and they might find a hiccup or two on the way there in those games. But, look, they got a really good schedule ahead of them. So we'll see, we'll see. But you got to get the big fella back.
So let me hedge my bet. Can I say that if they play like they played versus Portland, and then like the first quarter and a half of how they played versus Golden State, I think they can still avoid the play.
I'm a call FanDuel and see if you can kind of make that specific. So I can't make that bet.
Because if they play that way, I think they got a good shot to win a lot of the games upcoming on their schedule. They have a very favorable schedule for the hell that they went through in January. And it seems like the hell that they went through after the break, because they've only played one home game. They've got a pretty favorable stretch, including
I feel like the Pels been in the West Coast more than like NWA, bro. It's crazy.
Like they've got 4 of the last 5 games at home, right? So like literally you could build momentum. Like if Zion is back, you could build momentum heading into the thing. And because of the West and how it's shaped up, I don't want to say that they can't make it, because you look at every other game, what did we just watch? We just watched Phoenix versus Dallas, and then the Lakers versus the Warriors. So people are just beating each other up, and everyone's standing we look at the Pels, especially the last 20 games. You're like, that's really tough. And then you look at the standings, you're like, how are they just 2 games behind all these other teams? What are these other teams doing that they're not pulling away from the Pelicans? And so it's one of those things. It's don't let them hang around, right? Don't let them be close enough, and then the big fella come back. And to your point, yes, when Zion comes back, he's not going to be like he was toward the end versus the Sixers the first time, where he's just unstoppable no matter who you got against him. It might take him a little bit, similar to Brandon Ingram, to get a little rust off. But the difference between Brandon Ingram and Zion shaking a little rust off is pretty significant on 2 folds. Zion doesn't have to be 100% to shoot 50% from the field. And that's a bad game for him, right? He could be 80%. You saw it at the beginning of the season. You're oh, that's not Zion, but it's still 25, 8 on 50% shooting. The second fold is now Brandon Ingram is in the lineup again. So it's not just Zion playing by himself. And so it won't be Zion, we need you to score 35 every night. It's more so Zion, work your way back, still be your dominant self. They're going to be burst. Work your way to the point where now everything's a little bit easier for everybody else, because the offense looks hard. Everything looks difficult. BI is shooting contested fadeaway shots in order to get to his 40 every night. He's being hounded. And I feel as if, you and I talked about this off the pod, I feel as if the team is playing how they should play when you've got a CJ, a Brandon Ingram, and a Zion Williamson. When in reality, they need to play how they played last year for the play-in, for the playoffs, and all those things. Everyone has to do their roles. You got to pick your spots, your matchups to take advantage of, and that's how you get your offense versus, hey, if I don't have a wide open shot, I'm not even looking to dribble toward the goals. I'm just going to pass it back to BI. You got to find your advantage. You got to find your time to be assertive. There were times where early in the season, we talked about how Najee was getting to the rim. Najee was able to facilitate and do those things. Well, it seems like when Brent Ingram got back, it was like Najee got less aggressive. And it's not a situation where, yeah, you need Najee taking a whole bunch of shots, but his pure, dare I say, gravity and his ability to get to the rim, get to the foul line, creates for other people. So when you take that away, it becomes Brandon Ingram and a bunch of people standing around the three-point line. And that's not conducive to good offense. And so I think it's right there. I think the West is just a hodgepodge WWE Royal Rumble for the rest of the way. And so I think they're going to be close right here until Zion gets back anyway. And so for that, I'm going to say they still got a chance to avoid it altogether. Portland's missing Simmons. OKC just got Shea back, but like, are they really fighting to get back? Or are they just saying like, okay, let's see how it plays out. Let's grow our young players. LeBron is out. So like a lot of things, Utah is quickly falling down the ropes where they should belong, where they should be and where they belong. Like, things are there for the taking. You just have to seize them, right? And so in order to do that, you and I talked about it a couple pods ago. Everyone looks at the offense and said, man, the offense is so difficult. We just talked about it. It's so hard to score. They can barely get to 100 points. But like, you have to realize that the way that this team is constructed, I get it. This is an offensive league. People are trying to hear to put up points. But the way this team is constructed, the only way that they're going to win games and to put up enough points is by being elite on the defensive end. Because all these guys that you built around Zion, you built around Brandon Ingram, the thing that they do best is defense. And so what happens again, if you've got a quarterback in football who can't really throw the ball, what do you rely on? Your running game and your defense. If you can't really score the ball in basketball, you got to rely on your defense working at an elite level. It can't be middle of the pack like right now. Last 10 games, they're 25th in fouls, 19 in rebound, 16 in points, a lot, 27th in second chance. You can't play like that because you don't have that type of room for error on the offensive end. You got to be opportunistic on the defensive end that's creating for your offense. And like everyone wants to turn to like the live ball turnovers, and that's hurting the defense. But like all in all, they just haven't been as good defensively as they were early in the season. And so when you look at, you know, what Larry Nance said in Chris Connor's spaces, like our identity is defense. We want to make it so that every game is so hard to play against us. They haven't really been doing that, right? And so in your perspective, is it more of the defense or is it more of the offense that needs to take a turn in order for the Pelicans to ultimately achieve what they want to achieve?
So, and you make a bunch of good points, but I think that, so I think it's a twofold answer because yes, the defense needs to get better. The defense is struggling at times, but I think part of it is it's because the offense is struggling so much. And what I mean by that, number one, if a lot of your offensive possession end up in long rebounds, right? We talk about Brandon Ingram taking fadeaway three jumpers, and CJ getting up shots, up 3-pointers, and guys like shooting threes, settling for threes, and they're not going in. Those lead out to long rebounds, right? And you're already at a defensive disadvantage when you have guys down. But once you allow the rebound to, out kick your coverage, and now you have, a fast break going, it's going to be hard to stop teams in the NBA like that on 2-on-1 fast breaks, 3-on-2 fast breaks over and over again. And when you are making shots, right, when you are able to, at least set your defense up and give yourself a chance, then you're able to kind of get guys into positions and kind of communicate and see some of the better defensive things that we see. And so I think they work hand in hand. And when you think about the defensive end and the guys that are out there, I think that the way that the offense is struggling is starting to weigh on guys because they all feel the weight of the world to, all right, this shot has to go in. Like, this shot has to go in because, like, this is a precious offensive possession that doesn't go to BI. BI has had to pass me the ball. CJ has had to pass me the ball. I need to make this shot. I need to cut. I need to make, and it's weighing on guys. And so when you get to the defensive end, that mental sharpness isn't there. That attention to details isn't there. We're seeing some of like the Pelicans' best defenders like just get caught slipping backdoor cuts. Najee, if anything, has been a defensive stalwart, even when his offensive numbers weren't there. And there's too many times you see Najee getting caught on backdoor cuts, getting beat off the dribble. And it's like, this is Najee, right? This is the knife. Like this is what you're supposed to do. And I think it's just a lot of having to have the offensive responsibilities, when Zion is out. When you talk about Zion and you talk about 28 points, 25 points a game, it's not just 28, 25 points a game. It's, the way those points are generated, the amount of offensive attention that goes to defensive attention that goes to Zion when he's on the offensive end. And it's not just, okay, who can put 28 points on the board? You have to create all of that offensive gravity, or at least play through the fact that it's not there. And I think that the guys are they've gone through that for an entire season. And it's just difficult to kind of play that balance between trying to be good defensively, but also having the weight of your world on the offense on your shoulders as well. And so I think it's a twofold, but to your point, you really can't fix the offense with it, this late. Guys aren't just going to automatically start hitting shots out the blue and things like that. So what I think you can do is pay more attention to the defensive end. Be more aggressive on the defensive end. Be more opportunistic on the defensive end. Pay attention to those details. Get the stops and play an offense where guys like, Jackson and Kyra and guys who are now getting shots to play, Dyson, can get into the open court, and you can have these young players help you on the offense and defensive end in ways like that.
Right. It's one of those things where we talk about defense leading the offense, but like for this team, like it really does. Like, this is the team that needs to get out. You're a young team. I think that's the other side of it, right? Like, there's so many experienced vets where, like, what they do. Like, PJ Tucker may not score 5 points, but he's going to play 34 minutes. Like, this is your role. Whereas this is a roster full of, like, really young players. Like, to be in the conversation with the Dallases and the Suns and all those things, and most of your roster be like 23 and 24 in year 2, year 3, year 5, like stuff like that. Guys aren't fully established in who I am. And so when guys are down like a Zion, like a Brandon Ingram, like a CJ, it's like, okay, tonight I'm going to be this guy. But then tomorrow when they come back, who am I then? Like, and for young players, I think they struggle with that type of thing. And so you've seen Willie Green lead on veteran leadership. You've seen him lean on veterans altogether. And so Josh Richardson is away from the team right now. But one of the moves that Willie Green made last week was he brought Josh Richardson into the starting lineup. At first, I'm like, all right. Like, I see Trey is struggling on the defensive side. At the time, Josh Richardson was out shooting Trey from the 3-point line since joining the team. And so if you don't think you're giving up that much from the 3-point line and you're getting a player who has more know-how, so to speak, is what Willie Green would call it, sure. Okay, I see it. But, like, from your perspective, did you like the Josh Richardson move? Did you not? It's kind of mute at this point with Josh Richardson not being with the team right now. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't like it, bro. I actually did not like it. So Trey Murphy is he does have some issues on the defensive end. Again, I think it's a lapse of judgment, lapsing of decision making on the defensive end, where he just gets caught flat-footed, he could get caught sleeping, things like that. But I think that the Trey Murphy's ability to catch fire, especially with Zion out right now, is really pivotal to the team. And I think that his defensive, struggles or defensive fallacy, I think that he can work through those and, get better with those. We saw, last season when, this happened and it took a time for Willie to let him play and get into his rhythm. And, as a starter or even as a player off the bench, not even a starter, but Willie wouldn't even play him until he got right defensively. And it seems as though, he's kind of loosened the reins a bit, partially because he has to, right? He just down to a certain amount of players. You have to play. Yeah, you have to play players. But I do think, Trey did buy a little bit of Willie Green's grace last season, especially in the crunch time. in the playoffs. But I just think that his ability to knock down shots and spread the floor, and like I call him one of the most ignitable players on the team, I think that he needs to be utilized more, even in the starting lineup with Brandon Ingram. I think Trey Murphy's game is better with stars around him, with gravity on the floor with him, because it's so hard to help off of him. And it helps, Brandon Ingram, CJ, and it also helps Trey Murphy get open shots if you do go double team on those guys. And when you put him in the second unit and kind of make him, the sixth man, right? The traditional six man that everybody knows, where you plug him in and just, go score. Well, Trey Murphy isn't really in that stage of his development where he could just go get buckets by himself without setting things up, having something set up for him. And so I just think that his game is more conducive to being in a starter. And I think Josh Richardson is a guy that can do what he does no matter when you bring him in, right? Whenever you bring him in, he's going to play that defense. I think that he's a guy who's been in the league long enough that he could get his shot going coming off the bench, where he doesn't need a lot of, looks and attempts. And he's comfortable in the mid-range, which is in the same exact spot where Brandon Ingram and CJ, want to be. And I just think that, Josh Richardson being a guy that you sub in similar to a Josh Hart role, very similar to that role. Bring him in, let him be the grit, the grind, maybe play some extended minutes in the four where you need him over Trey. But I just think that Trey's game is better when you have gravity around him, and you make defenders make decisions as on Trey Murphy and Brandon Ingram and CJ and guys like that.
All right. I agree with you. I think that Trey's got to play, right? Like, you might not play Josh Richardson in a playoff game or playoff series, but you're going to play Trey Murphy. And so, to your point, I think the threat of Trey almost is more than his production at times because of how it spaces the floor. The other wrinkle that we saw recently was Herb at the 5. That's something you and I have been talking about for a long time in terms of how to incorporate Herb. I know that everyone's down on the fact that he's left to these open threes and should he shoot them, should he not, things like that. But there's so many plays that Herb makes throughout the course of a game that you can't take a guy like that off of the court. Like, maybe you take the ball out of his hands, so what you saw him become a screener, him become a diver, him bring the ball up the court, things like that. But like, all in all, what does Herb at the 5 do for the team? Because with Zion, without Zion, you're gonna have, we talked about it, Larry Nance is already banged up. There's going to be series, if you get there, where JV's not going to be able to be there. So you're going to have other options other than JV that you trust. So whether it be Zion, whether it be Herb and stuff like that. But what have you seen from the look so far?
Yeah, I think getting Herb comfortable as a small ball 5, like right now, is good for, this season and moving forward for whatever, however long Herb is on the team and with the team. Because like you said, the playoffs is a lot of, your stars. And when you talk about big men, it's not, if your big man isn't a star, a lot of times people go to small ball 5s or, small, not even centers at 5s, right? They just put forwards out there, like the Clippers. And, we've seen, other teams do it. Philadelphia is incorporating now by playing PJ at the 5 when Joel Embiid sits down. Just different things. You want to be able to have different guys. And listen, Herb's defensive chops are universal, right? They're universal up and down the floor. What I mean by that is, when you talk about the Pelicans and some of the bigs that's on the floor, whether it be JV, whether it be, Larry Nance, who, we know those are probably the two guys that Willie Green feels most comfortable playing. Neither one of those is really a rim protector, right? Neither one of those guys. Now, Larry obviously is athletic and will go for blocks and things like that and is able to, but he's a power forward, right? He's not that tall. And sometimes he gets jumped over and out-leaped. And so you don't really have
in the playoffs. Correct.
Exactly, right. So you don't really have, shot blocking to be taking away from off the floor as it is. But what Herb can do is prevent the guy from even getting to the rim, right? He can prevent the guy from even getting at the rim, and he can, turn the guy into help defense and things like that. And I think, Herb and his shot has been, I guess, a problem this season, right? So an adventure this season. But I do think that, he he has enough basketball IQ that if you play him at the 5, that some of these back cuts you're starting to see him do again. Some of these space filling moves that we always talk about, him being one of the best space fillers on the team. I think him at the 5 offensively is enough basketball IQ to know that you are the release valve, but you don't have to have the 3-point shot every time. And so, you saw some of it against Portland where, he and Dyson ended up like double teaming Dame, and the guy wasn't you couldn't even see Dame on the screen anymore because those two guys are so long and, kind of eclipsed him off the screen. And so there's a lot, to be left, to unlock with Herb at the 5. You see Golden State use Draymond very similarly to how I think Willie Green should use, Herb, setting screens for CJ, setting screens for BI. If you want to play him off, a lot of dribble handoff fixes that because the guys are such good shooters, especially in the mid-range area. So there's a lot of things offensively that you can do with Herb. And I think playing him at the 5, both offensively and defensively, benefits the team now and moving forward because you want to have as many of roster flexibilities as you can. And I think Herb's basketball IQ and his defensive chops make him good enough to be, a short-term small ball 5 lineup.
I'll say this. I like the lineup because of the versatility that it gives you. And I think there's a lot of different ways. Like we talked about before the season, like there are some lineups that the Pelicans could throw out there where everybody is 6'8" and everybody is, or 6'7", and everybody is switching, and it could look like poetry in motion, right? On offense. But here's the problem. We just talked about the Pelicans being a young team and how sometimes like they can't do simple things like making entry passes and making lobs and stuff like that. But the other thing that they don't do that's like simple things is like rebound. So if you're going to play small ball, everybody on the court has to be a rebounder. It can't be, hey, yo, JV got the rebound or yo, Larry got the rebound. Everybody has to fight the same way Josh Hart fights for rebounds at 6'5". Everybody has to do that every possession because that's how you end possessions defensively when you go small. And so what you saw last time, you saw it work versus Portland. What you saw versus the Warriors were like, okay, well, if y'all not going to rebound, we're just going to put it up there, get the rebound, and put it back because you have no big man underneath the basket because you have no rim protection, right? And so it's the small things that if you want to insert little wrinkle, you got to be good at the small things as well, which can be tough on a consistent level when you have such a young roster. So we talk about the young roster, and we talk about, the injuries to all these different guys, including Jose and things like that. But what that's allowed is some looks at some lottery picks that a lot of people have been calling for all season. You draft guys high, you expect them to play, but because of what the Pelicans are trying to build and trying to build it the right way, it can be tough, right? Like people want to see the young talent. People want to see, I see the people in the chat talking about like, this is going to help the team long-term in terms of waiting for trade to mature and things like that. I agree with all of those things. The problem is there are times within the games where I get it. If you trust in a vet and you are trusting what someone else can bring, I get it. But there's times where there's an obvious need for offense in the sense of Kyra, or there's an obvious need of someone who can protect the rim in the sense of Jackson, or there's an obvious need of someone who can push the tempo like a Dyson Daniels. And so those are opportunities where you just got to play those guys. I'm not asking you to play them 20, 30 minutes or anything like that, but you got to give it a shot. If you're on a 0-8 run or 0-10 run and you have no offensive side because Brandon Ingram's not on the court or whatever it would be, that's a great time to give a look to someone else, right? Because it's not going to hurt you at the end of the day. Like these guys need to gain experience as well. And so I want to break these three guys down individually. So Jax at times, again, the Portland game, he was outstanding. Like he was everywhere defensively. Like he caught Simmons on a backboard, on a layup and things like that. But then you also see the behind the back Jackson like he's in the wreck, hitting the square button. And then you see like when he does it and then like doesn't want to shoot it and get pulled out, but then gets a turnover or throws the ball 8 feet above Trey's head and stuff like that. So like you see the good and you see the bad, but like all in all, what have your thoughts been on Jackson since Larry went down and since Willie's really giving him a shot to get some real minutes?
I think Jackson has been good. I think Jackson has been good. he has brought a lot of things on a basketball court you see, and you just see it looks different when different players are in the game, right? You see if how the team moves, how the ball moves, like the camera just like is going up and down because it's people running, right? And there was a play against Portland that I think like truly encapsulates the difference between having like Jackson on the floor and having like Jonas Valanciunas on the floor. So it was like in the second quarter, and Brandon Ingram comes down, and like they were bringing the ball down off a missed shot, and like Jackson is sprinting down the court. And so, like, Brandon Ingram's guy is down court and he's picking him up. And, like, Jackson ran past the screen and I heard a whistle. So my first thought was, oh, it's an offensive foul, because that's all the Pelicans bigs get when they run down the court and set a quick screen. And it wasn't. It was a foul. Jackson got fouled because he was running so hard. The only way to stop him was to, like, hold him. And I'm like, wow, like that's something new. That's something different. You don't usually see that. But it's things like that, right? Speeding the game up, getting up and down the floor, and you see Jackson getting up and down the floor, leading fast breaks, meaning like he's ahead of the fast break because he's so athletic. Now, of course, you're gonna have the full Jackson Hayes experience, right? But the thing is that you know that already, and you know that going into the game. And listen, some of the things that he does is inexcusable, and Willie should pull him to the side. And have those conversations with him, and whatever the development is in that course. But there are things that Jackson does on the floor that no big on the Pelicans team can do. Nobody on the Pelicans team can
Jonathan
do.
Kuminga.
Yes, exactly. Right. That was surely a meeting at the summit. But I just think that what Jackson brings, you can't take that off the floor, especially with Larry not playing. And so, I think some of these minutes that he's getting, and some of these things that he's doing, although you got the bonehead plays thrown in, I think he is winning over Willie a little bit, at least a little bit. I'm not saying that you see him in the playoffs, but I think he's winning over a little bit, enough to give him more opportunities to prove himself even more.
Yeah, I think everyone looks at like the lobs and the crazy dunker spot dunks from Jackson and stuff like that, which again, those are exciting. That gets the momentum going. And so you don't want to take away from those type of plays. But like the thing that I love watching about Jackson is like for him not to know like a whole lot of like just basketball IQ plays, man, that guy is really good on defense. Like he's really good. Like there were times where Jalen Brunson tried to ISO him. Dame tried to ISO him. Simons tried to ISO, like guys who are known for breaking guys off the dribble. And Jackson forced either a turnover or a missed shot every single time. That is rare for a 7-footer, man. And so, like, if he could just figure it out, like he could be such a good piece for this Pelicans team. It's just,
Raph, not to cut you off, but I mean, when you think about what the Pelicans need right now, right? You think about rim protection, mobility of a big, right? You're stretching Larry Nance to his maximum. Rim protection, a mobile big, like the guy is on the roster. He's there. It's just, the things that come with him on the floor when he gets, a little too excited. And like I said, a couple years back, he plays sometimes like he's trying to go viral. And you can't have that with a team that is all pulling in one direction. And I think Jackson knows that. I just think that he believes a lot in his ability and his skill set, that he could do some of the things that you see him try to do. I just don't think he knows that, NBA defenders are as quick as he is and as athletic as he is. But he is exactly, when you think about some of the things the Pelicans need in their front court mishaps, it is availability. It is, verticality at the rim. It is mobility, you moving your feet, and it is rim protection. And Jackson Hayes is literally, all of that.
Bro, I saw a couple pick and rolls, not just the lob from BI to Jax, but like it's been so long since I saw a pick and roll either from CJ or BI, and you see a guy dive to the rim, because for all of the talent that JV has, he's just not very quick. He's just not very fast. So rarely do you see him dive into the goal like that, where he's wide open for an obvious pass. We're like, get him the ball. Now he'll be posted up and they can't get him the ball. So maybe that's the issue in itself. But altogether, it's just different looks that you get from an athletic big. And so talk about different looks. Man, listen, Dyson Daniels coming off the ankle injuries. I understand he's young, trying to figure out his body, stuff like that. But like every time he gets in the game, like there was a possession versus Portland where Dyson was like smothering the dude and he was not fouling at all. And I'm like, that's like 10-year veteran type defense. And then there's plays where he's able to accelerate the pace and get them going in transition and things like that. And I understand that like there's a finite number of minutes. Like if you want to play Dyson and you want to play Cairo, well, who's not playing, right? Is it Najee? Is CJ taking less minutes? Like what is happening to make someone else be more available and things like that? But like a guy like Dyson, I feel like he's the type of guy that can guard up. Like he could guard a smaller guard where Herb kind of struggles versus the quick jerky players, and he does better versus the long athletes like Shea and things like that. Whereas Dyson, like he's given Luka some fits at times, like a bigger body guys. And I think you can play him that way defensively as well. So like, what are your thoughts on Dyson trying to crack the rotation? At this point, everyone's looking for hopefully some type of rotation to potentially play in the playoff.
Yeah, Dyson is the impact Daniels. I mean, when you put him in the game, you immediately see things happen, right? Good things happen. And to go back to that Portland game, there was a possession where in the third quarter where Dame came off the ball and Dyson just did not let him get the ball back. Dame could not get the ball back. And I'm saying that is the kind of defensive intensity that, number one, like wins games. Like, those are the type of, if you're going to run with Dame and prevent him from getting the ball, even if it's not for the whole possession, but you waste 6, 7, 8 seconds because Dame has to fight over you because you're ginormous and have defensive abilities, that is valuable stuff. And then not only does it do that, but it's infectious, right? It gets the ball in transition. It turns teams over. It gets shot clock violation. It gets like the defensive morale up, and it gets everybody else excited and gets everybody else locked in. You see, when he pushes up on people, now the next person wants to deny the ball, and the next person wants to deny the ball, and then you're down to 4 seconds on the clock and a bad shot. So Dyson Daniels can do those things, and then offensively, we call, he was drafted to be a connector, right? He was drafted to be able to get, that pass off the rebound to the middle of the court into a pocket pass in the corner for a three, or to hit Zion, at the rim and things like that. And so he was already coming in, he at the beginning of the season, he called himself a point guard, right? He said, I want to learn from point guards, but because we play the same position. And so, that's his mindset. And so when you have a guy that's doing all that, and he's also 6'7", that is the kind of guy that has to be able to get on the floor. And, we talk about this so much where, this the Pels bench, the second line, none of those guys are separated so much where one guy has to stay on the floor, right? If Najee isn't playing well, throw Dyson Daniels out there, right? It can't be that big of a difference where Dyson can't even see the floor at all, right? Or same thing with Josh Richardson, right? Josh Richardson is a veteran, at least a young veteran, been around the league. But if he's not playing well, like Dyson Daniels can do some of those things that Josh Richardson does, as well. And sometimes even better on the offensive end when we talk about connecting and moving the ball and things like that. And so Dyson Daniels has shown, I would think enough to warrant some of those minutes. And, even when people get back, we talk about, just made a point about, somebody has to not play any minutes and things. I think Dyson Daniels is a playoff player, right? Like he's a guy that you want to have. He may not be ready to contribute in the playoffs in his rookie season now, but I mean, like he's a guy that when the games get tough and the games get tight, you want to talk about know-how, right? This is a guy with a lot of basketball IQ, a lot of defensive abilities, and a lot of offensive abilities as well that complement some of the guys that you're going to have on the floor at the end of games. So I think Dyson Daniels has played really well. Obviously, the shot isn't there, but he's comfortable taking it, right? He's not like shying away from not taking it. He's just not very good at making them at this point in his career. So I just think that he's a guy that needs to get as many reps and minutes as possible when you think about this roster.
Right. So you talk about someone who struggles to shoot. Now you have to talk about a guy who's shooting 52% from the three-point line this season. Now, I'll bet on a very small volume, but still, it's almost like Kyrie got injured, was like, you know what? I can't run right now, and I'm used to just running around like the road runner. So I'm just going to sit in the gym and shoot threes all summer long because he's shooting the ball with such confidence. Like off the dribble, catch and shoot, he's letting it fly. And what did we talk about before Kyrie got injured? Trying to figure out how to mix up your speed in order to be dangerous, getting stronger in your legs so your three-pointers can go down. Well, now they're starting to go down. You and I talked about this. Like, everybody loves Jose, and we've talked about how far Jose has come in such a short amount of time. But Jose and Kyra are like the inverse of one another. There are times where if you've got a guard that coming off the bench and you know you need to make it difficult, that's when you play Jose. I also think when you're struggling to score and you need a jolt because Zion is not available, you got to play Kyra. And so unfortunately, Jose gets hurt, but that's exactly how Jose got his opportunity last year. It's crazy how the world works out. Kyra gets hurt, Jose inserts himself. Now Jose gets hurt, Kyra's inserting himself. And so from what you've seen from Kyra, both off ball, and I'd like to see him in some pick and roll situations. Like, he's been doing a lot of catch and shooting. I'd like to see him going downhill, attacking the rim and create for other people. Do you think Kyra is carving out a role for himself down the stretch?
A lot of multiverse of madness variance talk going on in that example. But yeah, man, I agree. Like I've told you, we've talked about this about, you know, Jose being Kyra being the offensive version of Jose, where, you know, you need that spark plug to come in and score the ball. Like, that's Kyra Lewis. And, you know, when you talk about, you know, having a guard off the bench that you need to make it hell for, I mean, Kyra is no slouch on the defensive end either. True. You know, he's been, you know, picking up guys full court, and you know, and we know about his, you know, in the what you call pick six plays and, you know, and things like that. But going back to like what I said about Jackson, when you put Kyra in, you see things differently, right? You see things look different on the floor. Guys are running up and down the floor. They're spaced out, and Kyra. One of the things between Kyra and Jose, and I'm not sure this is like a schematic thing or it's like I'm just not sure, but when Jose brings the ball up, and it's kind of similar to what your point was earlier in the show when you said like they're playing a certain way, right? Like, Jose brings the ball up, and it's almost like he's trying to find somebody to get, you know, to get the ball to, right? As a point guard should. But Kyra doesn't look like he's doing that, right? Like, Kyra looks like he's like coming in the game to score, to like come off the screens and things like that, and then he lets the playmaker kind of play off of that. Like, he turns the corner. He's not looking for BI, right? He's not looking for those guys. He's looking to score. He's looking to use his speed and things like that. And even off ball, like, he's, you know, diving and you see him running around and always in motion and constant motion. And those are the kind of things that, you know, contribute to a healthy offense, right? You see him running around and having a guy watch him, and then you have to communicate, are we switching if he runs into the screen? And there's just a lot of decisions that have to make with all that kinetic energy that Kyra brings. And you talked about it, his jump shot. We talk about all of these guys that are missing threes. Kyra is letting it loose, and it is falling right now. And he is shooting with a lot of confidence. We saw this back in the G League and some of his G League stints where he looked like he was like coming off of screens like, I'm pulling this. I don't care what your defense has going on, but this is in the air. And he was shooting with confidence and making them. He and Sebron had a game where they looked like LeBron and Kyrie. They were just letting it loose together. But no, I think that Kyra is and I is going to be the most important thing. Are we back?
We're back. We're back. There we go.
Oh, weird technical difficulties. Okay, so no, like I was saying, so I think that Kyra is definitely making it hard to not play him, especially in times where the offense is lacking, and we see that a lot. A lot going on with the Pels lately. But it's gonna be difficult, man, because Jose made a name for himself late in the season last season when they needed him the most, and in the playoffs against Chris Paul, and I think that he has really earned a lot of trust from Willie Green, and is going to take a lot, for that trust to, obviously to go to Kyra instead of Jose. But right now, and we're seeing that at least, he's making a point to where if you need an offensive jolt and Jose is not cutting it, you have to consider putting in Kyra in any situation, whether it be playing game or in the playoffs moving forward.
Right. So talk about shooting more threes. We talk about actually hitting those threes. So Willie Green has made it a priority all season long, saying, hey, we need to shoot more threes. We need to shoot more threes. Well, they haven't necessarily listened. Over the last 10 games, they're 28th in 3 points attempted, 22nd in 3-point percentage. I agree. They should shoot more threes, but it's how they shoot their threes. Like, for example, the Warriors came back in the third quarter because they started raining threes. Well, guess what the Warriors do? They shoot threes. Like, that's been their MO. They have two of the greatest shooters to ever play NBA basketball of any kind on their team, right? And you got a Jordan Poole who wants to be like them. So you've got a bunch of guys who can shoot on that team. So it makes sense for them to play high speed and to take a lot of threes. The Pelicans, again, we talk about their youth and their struggles and like this being growing pains. Like they think, okay, well, if they're shooting threes, we need to shoot threes. And so a lot of times on fast break situations, it ends up as a transition three somehow when the Pelicans' strength is not shooting threes. And so, like, I agree. I've always said that, hey, they should shoot more threes, but the quality of their threes makes so much sense because trying to play somebody else's game, that's with a personnel that doesn't match up that well, that's how you get beat. Like, if you don't have a 3-point shooting team and everyone wants to pull up from threes, like sometimes it feels forced. Like, hey, I should shoot this three just because I'm sort of open, more so than what is the best shot. So what you saw in the Portland game, for example, came down, transition, they got the numbers. CJ has an open look. It's a good look, but Trey's in the corner for a great look. The ball always finds the shooter, right? Those are the type of threes that should happen, not the pass it around. There's an open lane, but I'm going to shoot it anyway just because I think I should shoot it more so than attacking the rim. Those are the ones that I think the Pelicans struggle with just because that's not their forte. And so the people that need to shoot more, unfortunately, BI has been quadruple teamed as we speak before tip-off. CJ, again, likewise, when BI is off the court. And then you've got Trey, and unfortunately, you don't have that gravital machine called Zion to generate open looks for them. And so for that, you need Trey to shoot more. You need CJ to take good open shots as well. I mean, Trey, what he's been doing over the last 12 games, we talked about that 8 mark. Shoot about 8. Rather you make or miss, shoot him regardless because the defense has to honor you out there. 6 of the last 12 games, he's hit at least 8. So he's trending in the right direction. But again, it's who's shooting the threes and when you're shooting the threes that are so important. You're seeing Herb start to take it down on the dribble just a little bit to get closer to the rim because he hasn't been shooting well. Naj, you saw him start hit a couple of those rotation threes because he's been thinking a little bit once he catches the ball for the wide open ones. It's how they shoot the threes. Have you had any issues with how they've been playing offensive? I mean, obviously, but how they've been shooting the three sometimes when it seems like they shouldn't?
Yeah. I think, when you talk about, 3-point shots and, 3-pointers, three-pointers for the Pelicans should be open threes and ones. Like they should be counted as the same thing because the Pelicans have a tremendous, even with the injuries, they have a lot of advantages down low because Brandon Ingram is an attacking wing who is 6'9" and crazy athleticism. You have Trey Murphy. You have a lot of like long, lengthy, athletic guys who can get to the rim. And especially when you have JV out there who has seems to have a center, mismatch on him every single game. Not Jokic or Embiid, but every other time he's like, okay, this guy can't guard JV. He's too small or whatever. But I just think that the to your point, and you made a great point, the quality of threes for the Pelicans, right? We saw it last night. Jason Tatum took 17 threes last night.
They gonna get him up
by himself. Obviously, you shouldn't be doing that, right? Obviously, I don't think Brandon Ingram should be shooting.
There's nobody in the roster that should be shooting 17.
Right. But like the guys who are shooting, right? The guys who should be shooting. When you talk about Trey Murphy, when you talk about Kyra, when you talk about Brandon Ingram even doing some shooting from three, and CJ, like those guys need to be taking better quality 3-pointers, and especially a guy like Trey Murphy. We talk about that. I put it on Twitter. Some of the people that's ahead of him in 3-point attempts, like he should be shooting more threes. But I think what is happening is you're now on a scouting report. Like you're not just and that guy, right? The fourth starter or the fifth starter, or the sixth man. No, you're the shooter on the team. Larry Nance even called him the shooter on the team. Like we have one shooter. It's Trey Murphy. If Larry Nance knows that, so does everybody else.
That's an issue in itself, but yes, you're correct.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, but I think that he has to find ways, and the team has to find ways, and Willie Green and the offense has to find ways to get him open to take more threes to supplement some of these points that they are missing with Zion gone and everything. And so I think that Trey Murphy should take more threes, but I think the other guys should stop taking as many threes that the step backs and the one dribble threes. Go to the rim, take some contact, get to the free throw line, and get in a bonus, get teams in a bonus in foul trouble early. That way that you can start playing from, if they come in with small ball threes, you can start playing more in the way that you want to play. But just coming out bombing threes and taking the first semi-open three for that early in the shot clock off of one pass and things like that, I think those are to the detriment. We see some like really bad shooting stats from the Pels during this time, and I just don't think pouring into it more by guys who should not be shooting threes, I don't think that does anything. So Trey Murphy definitely should be taking more threes, and CJ to take less of the step back one dribble threes and get to the lane more.
Right. I think all this boils down to like the Pelicans have opportunity down the stretch to either get the things that they set out for or severely underachieve based off what they set out to do. So I think it all boils down to the Pels got to grow up and mature in a very quick time. Like that's just what it breaks down to. And like some of those things are, for example, like taking the ball out of the best player's hands. You saw what happened versus Dame. To your point, they put in Dyson. They put in Herb. They said, no matter what, Portland, you are not beaten. We just saw you drop 71. There's no way Dame is going to walk us down time after time and time again and beat us in Portland. We need this win. They took the ball out of Dame's hand and made other people shoot. They won the game. So later, when you play versus Paolo and it's him one-on-one, they decided to let Paolo get to his spots, and he walked the Pelicans down. Then versus the Warriors, you let Clay play one-on-one, and he decided to walk and put the Pelicans away. So what did we learn? When every time Brandon Ingram gets the ball in the fourth quarter, third quarter, doesn't matter. In the game, he has multiple people looking at him. He has multiple people denying him the ball. There are no instances where they're just like, okay, BI, you got it. You know the one instance it had versus Portland, he had 40 points, right? So most teams are like, you know what? We are going to take the ball out of your hands. We're going to make someone else beat it. I understand other guys hit shots early in the game, guys you don't expect. But are they going to do it all game long? Are they going to do it in the clutch? That's what you have to live with in the NBA. And so the Pelicans have struggled to do this, not just this year, but multiple years in the past. And it comes down to their youth. It comes down to not playing enough, right? Like what the old people say, like you just ain't seen enough, right? But that's basic basketball. So you've shown the fans that you're capable of doing it. Now you've got to do it in every situation. It's got to be a nightly basis. Herb is a great defender. He's going to be on an all defensive team multiple times throughout the career. But in today's NBA, you can't let stars go one-on-one. It doesn't matter who you have on defense. You have got to live with other people beating you. Are there any other things that you point at, like, hey, if the Pelicans want to turn this around, here are some of the things that they got to start doing?
Yeah, I think you said it eloquently. I think, just helping on defense in late game situations. But another thing, just get JV more involved on the offensive end when he has a matchup. I think, we've been beating this drum for a while, but as long as Zion is out, he's your main source of mismatch in the post. Get him involved, because I think not only does it affect, by not taking advantage of that, you're probably taking a worse shot than a JV at the rim with, one of these centers that can't guard him because they're too small or whatever the case is. But you also take him out of the game defensively because he's pouting and, not pouting, but still, not feeling the same. And I just think that it hurts you by not taking advantage of the thing that he does well, because he's going to get attacked on the defensive end. And we saw, the way Jackson has been getting up and down the floor and things like that, and how much pop the offense has with he and Kyra and Dyson kind of being injected into the game. And I just want, whenever he does come back, when JV does come back, for them to attack, let him use his strength to attack the paint and play out that way, because I think that if he doesn't, he's going to get played off the floor, and you're going to look up at the scoreboard and wonder what was the impact, right? What was the contribution that he had? And it's partly because they won't give him the ball, but partly because, he gets played off the floor on the defensive end. So I think, to your point, playing defense, not allowing the best player to beat you all the time, and then also playing through JV. If they want to make some kind of run, they have to establish a offensive identity, which is back to being a smash mouth basketball team in the paint. And then on the defensive end, not allowing the team's best player to just beat you every single game.
Right. With that being said, everything is still right in front of you. So you got this starts off like a stretch of like 10 to 12 games where you got a lot of opportunity. And if you don't get it here, it ain't looking good down the stretch. So you start tonight versus Sacramento. I see somebody in the comments saying no D Fox tonight. That's huge. You know what happened last time the Pelicans played versus the Kings without De'Aaron Fox. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They won 5 in a row before they lost to Minnesota. What are your thoughts on the matchup tonight versus the Kings?
Brandon Ingram has to be the best player on the floor, and it can't be, it can't be close, right? He has to be the guy where you're saying, okay, this is the best player on both teams out there. He can't let Sabonis, his impact be more of an impact than Brandon Ingram. And when I say better, I don't just mean scoring. I mean in all facets of the game, defense, getting people involved, rebounding like he has been lately. I think when you see him affect the game in more ways than just scoring, the Pels look like a totally different team. And I think that he needs to do that this game. No D Fox means, that Damian Mitchell's gonna take over. Davion Mitchell's going to take over. He's not the same threat, obviously, but it means that a lot of other guys are going to get opportunities. Malik Monk had a ridiculous game against the Clippers, so he could get hot and score in bunches. So you want to make sure that you're keeping him bottled up and giving him kind of that same respect that you would give De'Aaron Fox, because you don't want him to get going and get his flammability going as well. So Brandon Ingram being the best player, keeping Malik Monk kind of in check. I think that's going to be the important thing, because I don't think Sabonis can beat you by himself, but he and getting contributions from a guy like Malik Monk can.
Yeah, it's a big matchup. JV's going against his Lithuanian teammate, so he's going to be revved up to play against him and really show out versus him as well. Then you got Luka and Kyrie on Wednesday. Now they haven't been playing great together, because that team, man, that Suns versus Dallas game was incredible, but there was no defense being played, like none at all on either side. What are your thoughts on that? That's a tough matchup, but it's at home, and it's the first one at home after a while.
Yeah. I think the Smoothie King Center is going to be a welcome sight for the guys. You're going to have to play, obviously, 48 minutes of high energy, high intensity, high IQ defense on them. But again, you're going to be able to score against them. And I think the Pels need to take advantage of that as well. And kind of make sure that they are not letting Luka and Kyrie go on these 10-0 runs and things like that. This is another game where JV should be able to take advantage of his size as well. So that should be a really good game. I'm kind of excited to get into the Smoothie King Center and see that one.
Yep, that one on ESPN. Then you've got a Thunder team that, again, they're 4-6 in their last 10, but Shea's back. Shea's cooking, doing exactly what we do before. The Pelicans have won every matchup up until this point, even without Brandon Ingram, even without Zion. So what are your thoughts on that game versus the Thunder?
Yeah, Shea is the anti-tank on the OKC Thunder who might be trying to tank. He is the one that carries them, but I think the Pels have a good beat on OKC, and I think if they can get that Dallas game, that they'll start to kind of feel themselves feel a sense of confidence and things going forward, or even if they at least play well in that game and keep it competitive towards the end. I think that their goals of trying to get where they're going and OKC's goals trying to get where they're going will meet and intersect, and I think the Pels will get that one.
I hear you. And then the last game of the week on a back-to-back, again, the last three at home at least, is versus the Blazers again. You got Dame again. Again, no Simons probably, but what do you think?
You want to make sure you're doing the same thing you did against him the last game. When it gets close, do not let him beat you by yourself. Make Nasir Little take shots. Make Trendon Watford take shots. Make Eubanks take shots, and all of those guys. That's not Damian Lillard. Make him trust his teammates more. And I think the Pels have a great shot at doing something this week. They have to commit to the defensive end, like you say, commit to rebounding and commit to not letting some of these best players beat them and just go one-on-one every time in the fourth quarter.
Right. So game's about to tip off probably in a couple minutes. What you got left for the people, Garrick?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give somebody a smile today. Appreciate you guys rocking with us and giving us that week to kind of get ourselves together, both professionally and personally. Just was a hectic week, so thank you so much. We'll be back on our regular schedule. As always, follow me at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow us on Twitter at PelsPod and on Instagram at Pels Podcast. And, of course, most importantly, subscribe to NewOrleans.network, and we'll see you guys next week.
Hey, Vino.